Hello, my name is Sunny Yeager. I am a Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences student. I am enrolled in the Health Professions program, and this phone interview is in regards to Meet the Expert assignment, and I will be interviewing Dr. William McGaghie. So as we proceed through the interview, you'll notice that there are some letters in front of the questions. Those are to reference as you scroll through the videos if you're looking for a specific question. Instead of reading it, you can just annotate the letter and go back. So as far as a disclaimer, I myself have nothing to disclaim. However, Dr. McGaghie does. The only disclaimer he has is for a book him and his team are writing about, titled Mastery Learning in Health Professions Education. The topics that I'll be discussing in this interview are the content research area of Dr. McGaghie's expertise, as well as research dissemination strategies, including experiences with academic publication, collaborators, and conference presentations. So let's go ahead and get started. So Dr. McGaghie is a professor of medical education at the Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine, Chicago. His research and writing in medical education ranges widely, including such topics as personal and program evaluation, research methodology, medical simulation, attitude measurement, medical student selection, concept mapping, curriculum and faculty development, as well as geriatrics. Dr. McGaghie has authored or edited 9 books and has published more than 300 journal articles, textbook chapters, essays, and book reviews in health professions education, as well as simulation-based education and other related fields. He has served on the Research Advisory Committee for Academic Medicine and reviews manuscripts for many other scholarly journals, including the Journal of American Medical Association and the New England Journal of Medicine. So I'm going to start off with some warm-up questions, and then we'll get into some more complex questions about his research. Dr. McGaghie, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what research elements are important for novice investigators.
It's so important for young investigators to seek and work very closely with research and professional mentors. The old expression is that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and we do every day. And it's important to understand that we are all part of a continuous system of investigators that stretches back, to early in the last century to where we are today, and it will extend beyond our own tenure. So just understand you're part of a continuum, and it's important to learn the history of the field that you plan to enter into and contribute to its improvement in the future.
So what knowledge, skills, or attributes do you wish you might have had before leaping into medical education research?
Oh gosh, I've been involved in medical education research for a long time, for over 40 years, and I think the issue is that the landscape has changed, and we're far more sophisticated, we're far more advanced today than we were when I first got started, and we're learning that some of the fundamental assumptions that underlie research models and methods, or have, at least for the past century, are now becoming a little obsolete. And we need to look for new and better ways to improve the state of affairs, both in terms of research as well as its outcomes, in terms of improved skills and abilities and professionalism among the learners we're privileged to serve.
So is there a particular project you think you should have started with first?
No, I had such a positive experience as a college student, and it gave me pause, made me wonder how come most of the other educational experiences that I was exposed to as a learner were so ineffective. And that if we were really serious about our teaching and helping people acquire skills and whatnot, we'd move away from the traditional classroom approaches, teaching and learning, and focus more on mastery, which is very learner-centered. It insists on excellence for all, and it provides for multiple opportunities for folks to learn and achieve, rather than kind of one-shot show up for class, take a final exam, and go home.
Yeah.
Dr. McGaghie, you had mentioned a little bit about mastery learning. Could you please describe your academic medicine last page about mastery learning?
The testing and assessment and instruction within a mastery learning context are seamless, and that assessment is a vital part of the educational intervention. And the philosophy is a little different here because we use data as a tool and not as a weapon. We use the pretest data to establish a baseline for every learner. Say, look, here's where you are today. And by the time we're finished with our curriculum or instructional module, whatever, you will be at the top of the mountain. And we constantly teach and assess and coach and help people be the best that they can be, complete each unit, and then move on to the next. So one of the big issues that we have to overcome in a mastery learning environment is the idea, especially in health professions, is the idea of what's called evaluation apprehension. If you've been involved in the education of doctors and nurses and other health professionals as I have, you realize that one of their worst fears is being exposed as being less than perfect in terms of what they can do and what they know and that sort of thing. And we simply have to get beyond that.
So have you seen your writing and theoretical exploration evolve?
Over the past, 25, 30 years, it's grown, it's matured, and we like to think that we're smarter and better today than we were 25 years ago.
Yeah.
At least we hope so.
That's true.
And if you read Anders Ericsson's book, Peak, it was published, I think, last year. The title is Peak, Secrets from the New Science of Expertise. It's a book that Anders wrote with a gentleman named Robert Poole. They say in a number of places in the context of that book that as you work in a professional field, as your thinking sharpens, as your thought ripens, you become more thoughtful and better at what you do. So deliberate practice in scholarship is similar to deliberate practice in, skill acquisition in the health fields. And that the more you practice, the more you exercise, the more you learn, the better you become at your craft. And hopefully, I hope anyway, that I'm a more insightful scholar today than I was back in the
80s. Winston Churchill states, "Success is stumbling from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm." What hurdles have you encountered, and how have you been able to navigate around them?
We never enter into a project on the assumption that it's not going to work. We've learned a lot from our experiences, and we have a pretty good sense about how to build mastery and learning curricula for physicians and other people that will help them be more skillful and learn from their experiences and become really elite performers. And that's what our goal is.
In September 2015, your team sent a letter to the Journal of Academic Medicine's editor concerning a study in which virtual simulations were utilized to assess resident cognitive skills. The researchers concluded the use of virtual simulation may be warranted to improve care capabilities in future health care workforce. In the letter, you recommended the researchers should have employed the mastery learning approach to obtain a better conclusive result. Why is that?
The reason we wrote it is that this group, headed by Dr. Spurl Hillen and others at the University of Minnesota, did such a wonderful job in creating this marvelous diabetes education curriculum to educate primary care, internal medicine docs, maybe family docs as well, on how to manage patients with diabetes, which, as you know, is just a huge public health problem and one of the biggest issues that affects healthcare today. And so they spent all this time and energy creating this wonderful curriculum and then implemented it in a way that was simply very, very weak. And it was not required, and I don't recall all the numbers. Less than half the people actually showed up for the curriculum, and the outcome measurement involved a very tiny fraction of the eligible learners. And while they were able to demonstrate statistically significant improvement
So, how important do you consider actively providing guidance to other peers?
In these types of situations?
Well, we do the best we can in the writing that we do, and in the reviews that we prepare for people who submit manuscripts to journals that we're privileged to evaluate, peer review and that sort of thing. And we simply do the very best we can to advance the field. In our own scholarship, in our peer reviews, in our presentations at meetings, and things like that, to constantly push the envelope forward.
Dr. McGaghie, in November of 2015, an academic medicine piece describes some significant advancements in programs adopting the approach to mastery learning. Now that it's 2018, how have you seen things progress or not in programs that continue to adapt such learning?
We've done a lot of work here at Northwestern in introducing the mastery learning model for skill acquisition, and even things for skill acquisition among health professionals like doctors and nurses and physical therapists and many other people. We've also started some projects now where we're using the mastery learning model for patient education. For example, there's a program here at Northwestern where patients who are awaiting a heart transplant are put on what's called a ventricular assist device that requires daily maintenance either by the patient themselves or their family members. And it's about maintaining sterility, preventing infections, that sort of thing. And we're working with a team of nurses to educate patients to very, very high mastery standards in order to self-manage these VADs, as they're called. And it seems to be working well. Now, we won't know the full story until a year or so down the road when we look at effects on things like infection rates and things like that, readiness for transplant. But we're optimistic that the mastery learning intervention for the patients, in this case, will yield good downstream results as well. We've had many projects involving resident physicians, nurses, doctors, where we've demonstrated that mastery learning approaches have huge effects not only on the acquisition of clinical skills, but also on downstream results like fewer complications among patients who are cared for by people who are mastery trained, as well as reductions in things like the infection rate in the medical intensive care unit here at Northwestern. So we're trying to set the pace, and there are a number of other medical schools and health professions settings that are beginning to take on or adopt this model. Although it takes a long time. Change comes very, very slowly in professional circles. And I'm reminded of a piece written by a gentleman named Don Berwick. He wrote an article in JAMA a number of years ago called, what is it? Adoption of Innovation in Healthcare or something like that. I can send you the citation, where he addresses the issue of what's called implementation science and why it's so difficult for even valuable innovations to spread and take hold in places other than the location where they originate.
Again, in 2015 Academic Medicine article, you note that advancements will derive from close collaborations involving clinicians and specialists in psychometrics, clinometrics, and health services research. In your experience, are those close collaborations increasing in number? And what can we do to improve collaboration in a way that fosters development of such advancements?
Well, I can only speak for the situation here at Northwestern, and I can't speak for other research groups at other major universities, although I'm sure they're doing fine. It turns out that if you get into the literature on what's called the science of team science, and we have a big group here at Northwestern who studies these things, one of the most important features of really productive academic groups, scientific groups, is what's called functional diversity. The last thing you want to do if you want to have a productive research team, and by the way, nobody works alone anymore, and productive research is done by teams of people. And the last thing you want to do is, when you form a research team, is surround yourself with people who are very, very similar to yourself. You want to have a research team that is diverse in terms of skill set, in terms of intellectual history, in terms of outlook, and definitions of productivity. And the more diverse your team, the more likely it is that you'll do groundbreaking and important work. Because people who are diverse see opportunities and can respond to them in ways that a siloed group simply cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
So the more diverse your team is, the more likely it is that you'll be productive, so long as you have a sense of a common mission, that sort of thing.
So how difficult is it to disseminate innovations in the healthcare environment?
The paper that I think you should be aware of is written by Don Berwick, Berwick, and it's titled Disseminating Innovations in Healthcare.
Let me write that down. Disseminating what?
Disseminating Innovations in Healthcare. And it was published in JAMA in 2003, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You go into Google Scholar, you go into PubMed, and you can find, you just type in Berwick, DW,
I found it.
and it will pop up.
You're right. It was in 2003.
All right, it's a very important paper that addresses how difficult it is to disseminate even really promising innovations in the healthcare environment, and that the power of inertia in the workplaces that we reside in is sometimes overwhelming, and it just takes a long time for innovations to take hold and spread.
Dr. McGaghie, it has been 10 years since you published the AMEE Guide for Scholarship, Publication, and Career Advancement in HPE. This guide serves as a resource for those who are starting or have already started in this specialized field. What improvements have you observed since then that can help those who are just starting in their HPE endeavors?
Well, I think what's curious, Sonny, is that when I got started in this field a long time ago, 40 years ago, there are very few people who were laboring in the health professions education vineyard. There were just a very small number of folks, especially people who were health professionals themselves, doctors, nurses, that sort of thing. And it wasn't easy for young people in those days to start a career with an emphasis on health professions education. Now that picture has changed radically in the past 40 years. I mean, we have this proliferation of master's degree programs in health professions education worldwide now. And it's become a very viable career option, whereas years ago it was not. We have many journals now who are devoted to education and health professions. Specifically, we have a much warmer reception from even mainline journals now to receive manuscripts that address educational issues. And the picture's changed a lot, and I find that very encouraging. So the professionalization of medical and nursing education as a career path is far more pronounced now than it was years ago. And that's very heartening.
So what do you think are some best practices of publication and dissemination?
The standard approaches are, writing papers for publication in mainline journals, that sort of thing. And that's been the mainstay forever. Writing books and book chapters, I mean, that's kind of the old-fashioned way to advance oneself. But you mentioned just a few moments ago that social media are becoming even more and more prominent. And I suspect that that'll become an even bigger part of the picture as years go by. Although as an old-timer, that's not a big part of my life. But if you talk to my kids, my children, who are probably about your age, they would say that it figures prominently in what they do and how they disseminate their work.
So, have you seen any new journals transpiring that would be of interest to our field?
The CSAM folks just started the journal Advances in Simulation,
Mm-hmm.
which is new. Deborah Nistel is the editor of that journal. I'm sure you know about Simulation in Healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
which is published by Society of SSH.
Correct.
And that's been around for, 15 years now? I think it's in 15th, 16th volume, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it also turns out that many mainline journals in medicine and nursing, Annals of Internal Medicine, New England Journal, JAMA, other specialty journals like in obstetrics and psychiatry, they're very interested and are very receptive to receiving manuscripts that address simulation-based education in ways that historically they have not. So there's a growing awareness both within specialized journals as well as more general journals about the importance of high-quality education in disseminating the results. A couple of the most prominent papers that our group has done have been published in journals like Critical Care Medicine
Mm-hmm.
and the Archives of Internal Medicine, which is great because the papers are targeted toward clinical practitioners rather than specialists in the education field that you and I represent.
Mm-hmm.
And the trick there, I think that was a piece of the scholarship and publication piece that I wrote a decade ago, is that you have to have a very clear sense as to what your message is and then how to target it to the people that you want to influence.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to target the paper to a journal that will reach the audience that you want to address.
Mm-hmm. Those are great advice.
Yeah, I mean a lot of my colleagues, internal medicine physicians and whatnot, they're great docs and they read the Annals of Internal Medicine, but they don't read Simulation in Healthcare and they don't read academic medicine. So if I want to reach the clinical audience, I've got to publish my work in journals that they read every day, and to make it easy for them to access and understand the advancements that we're doing in education. So that's the trick.
Are there any projects you're working on now that you're excited about and would like to share?
Well, this book project that we're engaged in,
Mm-hmm.
the book is titled Mastery Learning in Health Professions Education. It'll be published as part of the Springer series. We're about halfway finished. It takes a lot of work, and we're doing the project not only. There are actually three goals for doing the project. The first is to publish the definitive piece about mastery learning in health professions. So I mean that goes without saying. The second goal is to challenge young scholars within the Northwestern community to think and write about topics that stretch them beyond their comfort zone. So we're using this as an educational enterprise to strengthen the stock of intellectual human capital here within the Northwestern community. And then the third goal is to, since all of the writers for the book will be Northwestern people or people with Northwestern affiliations, it will bring us closer together as a team, having had a common experience and hopefully a successful one. So it's write the definitive book, challenge young people to get stretched beyond their comfort zones in terms of their knowledge of mastery learning and how it works, and then third is a team-building exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're up to.
Awesome.
And it's a lot of fun.
I'm sure they're really excited that you ended up going back to them. That's awesome.
Well, it's again, nobody works alone anymore, and the trick in this work is to formulate and advance and expand teams of people who are really smart, who have common values and goals, and who can make each other better. And that's what we're up to.
So, are there any future conferences you will be attending or teaching at?
For many years, myself Jeffrey Groom of University of Miami and Barry Eisenberg and others have taught a pre-conference course on the fundamentals of health professions education and research. And I imagine we'll be doing that again. We just submitted the proposal, I think, yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll probably also do a pre-con course with Mark Servo. Mark is the editor of the journal Simulation in Healthcare, along with Aaron Calhoun, about writing for publication.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine we'll be on the program with those issues and maybe some other presentations as well. But I certainly intend to be at IMSH in San Antonio in January.
So, lastly, Dr. McGaghie, is there any other advice you would like to share?
The issue is just to be great. Set your goals very high. Have very high standards for yourself, and expect very high performance from the people around you. And just enjoy the ride. It's a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun. Absolutely. It has been a lot of fun. Well, Dr. McGaghie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the time that you spent, with me and us who are going to be listening to this conversation.
So that concludes the interview with Dr. McGaghie. Thank you so much for listening.